Morning, everybody. Oh, okay. Good morning, everybody. I'm Jane Dixon. I'm coordinator of the Share and Repair Network, which is a project run by Circular Community Scotland. And this is an event co-hosted with ourselves and the Highland Climate Hub. We've got Lucy Ireland here from Highland Climate Hub and Edinburgh Tool Library. So Chris Hellawell from Edinburgh is here as well. The format of today is I'm going to be doing a presentation just talking through the resources that we have available as a network to help you get set up if you're interested in running a sharing library. Lucy will be talking about resources specifically available for groups in the Highlands, but that will give you an idea of what is available through the climate hubs in general. If you're from an area out with the Highlands. And then we'll pass on to Chris to talk specifically about his knowledge and experience, because Edinburgh Tool Library is the longest running tool library in Scotland, celebrating its 10th birthday this year. And so there'll be an opportunity to ask questions of Chris. So for those of you who've just arrived, if you could just put in the chat box just to say hi and where you're from, that would be really helpful. Okay, so I am going to start sharing my screen and we'll just get on with the presentation. Okay, so that's that one. Share that. Okay, so Izzy, is that all okay?
That is perfect.
Great. Okay, so welcome everybody. As I said, this is going to be a really broad overview of the things that you need to think about if you're wanting to set up a sharing library. We exist, the Share and Repair Network exists to support you in that process and to help you once you are set up and running. So these are the list of things that we do. Of most relevance is our sharing library setup guide, which goes through step by step in detail the sort of things that you need to be thinking about. So today's presentation is just going to sort of pick out a few of those headline things by way of an introduction. Okay, so first off is organizational structure. At the moment, because of the current funding environment, which is very challenging, we would probably recommend to people, if you can do this as a project of an existing organization, you'll be 2 steps ahead of the game and it will make your life a bit easier. However, if you are starting from scratch and you want to begin at the beginning, we have lots of signposting to organizations who can help you decide on the most appropriate structure, whether that's a charity, or a CIC, but you will need some sort of structure, really, if you're going to be working in the voluntary sector. As I say, there is lots of help and support out there. Probably your first starting point would be your third sector interface organisation. Secondly, premises. So premises, we're talking about stuff. So it's like, where are you going to keep stuff? Where are people going to come and pick the stuff up from? So this will be probably your biggest commitment, your biggest cost, your most significant cost if you have to pay for somewhere. You don't need a massive warehouse. This picture is of the tool library in Killin, which is just in the north of Stirlingshire. And it's a cupboard. It's a nice, generous cupboard with a window. It's the cupboard at the back of a charity shop, and they serve a community of 900 people, and they have a really good stock of equipment. And they are in a position, fortunately, that they're able to get their premises free through the Community Development Trust. If you can go into partnership with someone to get a free space, then obviously that's really, really helpful for you. But for lots of projects, it's balancing out cost versus the perfect location. So the perfect location would obviously be somewhere that's really accessible. It's easy for people to reach. It's easy for people probably to drive to if they're going to be taking away big bits of equipment. And is it visible? Is it visible to your community? But that's versus, again, what you can cost. So it's something that does need a lot of thinking about and exploring partnerships in the rest of your community. And I've put down there opening times because sometimes premises will have an impact on when and how you can be open to the public. But opening times is another really significant thing to think about. We do have projects that manage to just be open once a week, and they operate perfectly well on that basis. But the more you can manage to be open at accessible times when people are available, the more accessible you are to a wider section of your community. So that is something to really think about. And sometimes the venue will possibly dictate when and how you can be open and what times you can be open. Okay, oops, stuck. Right. Okay, so inventory, the actual stuff that you are going to be sharing. What is that going to be, and how are you going to find it? So we have some projects where the stuff itself is maybe the trigger point, the starting point. So for example, we have some community gardening projects and they have a stock of gardening tools and they want to start sharing those. So that is their inventory is established before they've even begun their sharing library. However, with others, a lot of people are starting from scratch. So how do you work out what it is you want to share and how you're going to do that? One really useful thing is to look at other existing projects. So on our website, we have a map of all of the share and repair projects that are in the network, and you can click through each individual project and go to websites, and you can have a look at the inventory of other organizations to see the sort of things that people are already sharing. If you're looking beyond tools to having more of a general sharing library, a library of things, one project that I always suggest people have a look at is the Community Toolbox in Dundee, which is part of Wellbeing Works. And they have a really interesting range of more sort of like lifestyle things. So they have camping equipment, they have things for days out, they have things to have children's parties, young people's parties, kitchen stuff, a whole variety of things. So once you've worked out the sort of things that you might like to share with your community, it's a really good idea to start getting a sense if that is what people want. Quite a lot of projects will conduct a questionnaire. You can't hold people to it. Oh, you said that you would borrow a tent and you've never borrowed a tent. However, it's a good idea to just start getting a sense of what people would be interested in borrowing through your sharing project. And then how do you go about actually getting the stuff? One way of doing it is by putting a call out to your community to ask for donations. And I think Chris from the Tool Library will agree that most of the equipment that Edinburgh Tool Library have is received through donations. Donations can be a bit of a mixed blessing. You've got to be careful that things are good quality, they're in good working order, and they are, you're not just receiving a lot of junk. And that can be something that is an ongoing issue for sharing projects, particularly things like tools. It's quite common for people, if they're clearing out a house from somebody who's passed away, there may be a whole shed of tools and they try and offer it to their local tool library. And you just have to be quite careful that it is actually, it's good stuff that you want to use. There's a project down in the Borders that they will take most tools from people, and then every now and again they will just have a secondhand tool sale. So it seems sort of quite counterintuitive that you're trying to get people to share things, but you're selling secondhand as well. But it seems to work. It seems to work really well, and that is a good income generator on the side as well. But there may be things that you decide that you do want to invest in. There's some key things that you do want to purchase along the way. And it is always good to try and invest in as good quality items as possible. You really don't want to be buying your tools from the middle aisle in Lidl, because they are just not going to last, particularly because they're going to be used a lot. So again, this is something that you can talk to other tool libraries about. So obviously, Chris is available here. But there are lots of tool libraries now across Scotland, and if you want to go and visit and have a chat with somebody, there is funding available through the Community Learning Exchange, which we can support you in an application through that if you're a member of Circular Community Scotland. And just, having a chat with another organisation, finding out what their most popular items are and what they feel it's worth investing in can be a really useful exercise. Okay, so how much is this actually going to cost, or what are the costs that you need to think about? So I've talked a little bit about the inventory, so you might need to invest in some items of your inventory. The other thing that you really do need to invest in is storage solutions. It might sound a bit dull, but it's really essential to be well organized and to make sure that the stuff that you have is accessible. All of your volunteers can see where it is. And yeah, you don't want to go losing things or things being damaged because they're not stored well. So it might be, if you've got a fantastic volunteer who can put up shelves for you from recycled wood, then that's all sorted. But it might be that you actually have to invest in some good quality shelving. And then the other thing is safety. For electrical items, we would strongly recommend that everything is pat tested before it goes out. So you will need a pat testing machine. And then marketing costs, it might be a nice idea for you to have leaflets or posters or banners printed for the launch of your project, and they are there. That's also an ongoing cost. So ongoing costs, we've talked about premises. Obviously, there's utility costs. I put rates in brackets because as a charity or a voluntary organisation, hopefully you wouldn't be required to pay rates, but it's something that you need to think about because you need to apply for your rebate. There's repairs and maintenance for tools themselves. You might need spare parts or other things to make sure you're keeping the tools in good working order. There will be costs involved in lending software, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. There's insurance, there's possible staffing costs, or if you're doing this entirely on a voluntary basis, it's a good idea to make sure you do have volunteer expenses covered so that you have a way of rewarding your volunteers and making sure that they're not out of pocket. There's potentially governance and overheads if you're an independent organisation, and then training. We can provide PAT testing for 2 people per organisation, as in PAT testing training. But it's a good idea to get first aid training as well for staff and volunteers. Okay, and then income. What can you expect to receive in income from your organisation? This very much depends on how you set your membership or borrowing fees. And again, there is no right or wrong answer to this. I would suggest, again, having a look at all the different tool libraries, just have a look at their websites and see what different people charge. Some people do everything entirely free. Other people, they might have a membership fee, 20, 30, 40 pounds for the year, and then everything is free. Some people have a membership fee plus cost per loan. So this is an example of an organisation who, for whatever reason, it's slightly more expensive per loan to borrow the window cleaning equipment, whereas the other 2 items are £2 per loan. I don't know how they've set that up, but it's something that you can, again, talk to people in your community and try and get a sense of what you think is possible. The other sources of income, grants, workshop fees. I've asked Chris to talk about workshops. It might be that you just cover costs. It might be that you do that as an income generating thing. And then there's the sale of sundries like sandpaper and goggles and things. That might not be a huge income generator, but you can possibly make a profit, or you can do that at cost. It depends on what your choice is. Okay, so I've mentioned software. So there are 2 main types of software for you to use for a sharing library. MyTurn is the most popular one in Scotland. It could be because that's the one that is used by Edinburgh Tool Library and is recommended by them. There's also Lend Engine, which for some reason is really popular with toy libraries. Don't know why that is, but they're the 2 main ones. And we have done most of our resources in terms of training has been in MyTurn. So there are lots of resources available on our website in past training sessions in MyTurn. Okay, so what does the software actually look like. So on the left here, we have a listing from an organisation who are loaning out a food processor. So it's really basic. There's a photograph. It tells you what it is, talks about what's available. You can download a manual, or I'm just going to see if this hopefully will work. This is going to take you through to Edinburgh Tool Library's website. So can you see that, Izzy? Is that okay?
Sorry, I was on mute. Yep, we can see that fine.
Yeah, excellent. Okay. So this is an example of a listing of one particular item on Edinburgh Tool Library's website. So as you can see, there is a huge amount of information. So first off, it tells you what it does. It's a picture of it. Talks to you about safety and the PPE that you require. Says what else you might need. There's instructions on how to use it. There's a link to a video, so you can see extra information about how to use it. You can download the manual. And then this is, you can see if you want to book it out. So you can see it's actually already reserved for this weekend. Somebody's going to have a busy weekend. They're going to be using that. And then there's more information on the right-hand side here about where to pop it up. So Edinburgh Tool Library have two different locations listed here, but I think there are other locations as well. So that obviously is a huge amount of information, and it might be a little overwhelming about how to set that up. But fortunately, we have a project, we have a resource that was created by the volunteers at Edinburgh Tool Library, which is snappily called the My Turn Tool Descriptor Database. And it's basically a spreadsheet database which is available for you on our website, and it contains all of that type of description that you saw just there for the cordless multi-tool, and that is available for lots and lots and lots of different tools. So we also have instructions about how you can take that database and upload that to My Turn. Or I was talking to somebody the other day who's used it, and they already had My Turn set up, and she has literally just gone through and cut and pasted different bits out of that. But that is a really, really helpful resource. It saves you lots of money. Well, not lots of money. It saves you lots of time, and also means that you can get your software and database to a really professional level with lots of information for your customers. Okay, so I've talked about stuff and buildings and software. So the final thing, really, well, not the nearly final thing, is to talk about your volunteers and staffing. So again, we do have some projects where it's literally one or two people in a small community running the project, but the more people that you can get involved, the stronger your organization is going to be. The sort of things that you need people to cover. Obviously, there's the customer service. There's the actual talking to people when they come to pick up whatever it is they're borrowing and dropping it off. There's the data admin side of things, managing that database and dealing with payments. There's repairs and maintenance, which again is really important. Some projects do manage without a dedicated person doing repairs and maintenance, but they do struggle a bit. And I would say if you can, this is one reason why repair projects work really well alongside sharing projects, because if you've got access to that skill set, because if things come back, you want to check them, you want to make sure they're in good working order, and you need to be able to check them before they go out again, that everything is working well. And then you need somebody to be able to do the pat testing if they are electrical items. And then finally, social media and communications. So once you're setting it up, you want to be able to carry on communicating with your local community. So social media is your obvious point, but there are lots of other ways of communicating and marketing your project. And again, we've got a good checklist in the sharing guide to give you some ideas about how to do that. And finally, so it concerns lots of people, is insurance and health and safety. So yes, you will need insurance, and yes, you need to think about health and safety. We've got a good lot of resource on the website about this in a lot more detail. We ran a training session quite recently, and all of the information from that is on the site. But just sort of headline things are: talk to your insurance company first, or talk to a broker and make sure that you can be covered. If you're struggling to find insurance, then we have 2 companies that we would suggest talking to who are very happy to cover sharing libraries. And then health and safety, as I said, PAT testing is important. Checking the items when they come back and before they go out is really important. We have access to checklists for the sort of things that you need to be covering. But it is possible. It's not overwhelming. And again, it's something that you can talk to other tool libraries about if it's something that concerns you. So if you're not already a member of the Share and Repair Network and you're interested in setting up a project, then do please get in touch. Once you join the network, then we can give you access to all of the information that I've talked about. I'm going to stop sharing now. Okay, so that is everything from me. I'm going to hand over to Lucy. So Lucy, I'm going to make you co-host. There you go. Awesome. Okay, so that's everything from me. So Lucy, over to you to talk about the Highland Climate Hub.
Thank you very much. I've just realised I've never shared my screen on Zoom before, so this might be interesting.
It's literally there's a little green arrow at the bottom of your screen. Hopefully, you got that. Is that okay?
Now, what's that doing? Is that working?
Yeah, that's perfect. We can see that.
Awesome. Cool. So yeah, as Jane said, I am from the Highlands and Islands Climate Hub, and I will mostly be speaking about the Highlands and Islands Climate Hub, but I think there's 22 or 24 different hubs across Scotland set up now. So they all offer reasonably the same thing. Some will offer slightly different, but I'm just going to give you a really quick update on us, what we do and how we can support community groups, and hopefully it's useful for you. So first of all, this is our team. We've got development officers based all over Highlands, Orkney and Shetland. We're spread from Lochaber up to Shetland. So that's all of us there, including our core team. I'm based up in the Thurso office, so I'm quite far up north. So like I said, this is our area. So we've got this sort of blue line that comes around here down into sort of Nairn and Strathspey area as well. And I think we've got, I couldn't actually tell you, 330 members, I think, involved in the hub. So it's Highland Council, Orkney and Shetland Council as well. So this is a little bit about the hub and the vision and sort of what we do. So I'll just read the top bit for you. So our vision is for communities throughout the Highlands and Islands to be bold, collaborative and resilient by creating climate-friendly projects and initiatives which address the needs of their communities and lead into transformational climate-ready region. So we do this through support. So we support community organisations, from established organisations who are already carrying out climate action projects to communities who are looking to just establish themselves as a group. So the whole broad spread of everyone that we could support, we do. We're there to support not only groups who are already carrying out climate action projects, but those to help those who are looking to make their organisations and communities more sustainable and climate friendly, either in planning for the future or in their operations that they're already doing. Collaboration. So we support and encourage communities and community organisations to collaborate with each other, sharing best practices and working together on projects, activities and initiatives. So it's bringing people in their regions nationally together to work together to meet the same sort of goals. Education and training. So we offer training and climate education responsive to the needs of our members. This includes currently, we're sort of looking into the climate literacy training, a short climate awareness training session, net zero and environmental policy workshops, which is in our Sustainable Spaces programme, which was just launched again about a month ago. And the cost of living crisis training and funding masterclasses, which my manager does. So these are the sort of trainings that we already have, but we're super open to anything else. If you guys are coming across things that you're like, we're not sure how to do this, we could really use some help, we're more than happy to work out some sort of training and workshops for you to help where we can. So celebrating community climate action. So long before there were social media influences, the change makers in our communities were, and they still are, the influences of how we can make our places better to live, work and visit. This is a big thing in the Highlands with tourism, and I'm sure it is in a lot of your areas with tourism coming into Scotland. So we want to celebrate positive actions and the work that's being carried out by communities throughout the region, with an emphasis on the positive aspects of taking climate action. Capacity building. So we know a lot of community organisations are dealing with often complex issues within their communities. We've obviously been through COVID, we've got cost of living crisis, things like that. Volunteer fatigue is obviously a big thing when it comes to community groups. A lot of it relies on volunteers, and there's only so many to go around. So we're here to sort of help you build capacity in your organisation. It can be informal support to get to a project where you need it to be, offering training and stepping in as a volunteer if needed. We've been to some events before just as an extra person, just to help out on the day as well. Giving a voice to our communities. So government policy, local authority policies, they're all now headed in the direction of addressing the climate emergency. So we're here to help give your communities a voice in the direction of those policies as they're made. And we can take your views and feed them back into Scottish Government through our reporting as well. And the last one on here is funding support. So we offer small grants ourselves to community organisations. We've got a climate action fund, and September every year we do our climate festival, which we offer funding to groups to be part of as well, to hold an event or an activity. So yeah, that's sort of what we do. The aims of the hub and things like that. So I'll move on to the next one, if it'll let me. There we go. So climate action and community needs. So we try and match them as much as we can. Like it says here, togetherness and mental well-being. We would look at sort of the community growing spaces, greenhouses, things like that, getting people together in a social area and doing something productive that they feel good about. It's climate action at the same time it's helping in the community as well. Active travel, we can help with that, sort of setting up partnerships, putting you in touch with Cycling UK, that sort of thing. Again, it's climate action, but it's community needs, and improving green spaces as well. So food security, it can be a community issue, but it can also be looking towards climate action. So taking food that would otherwise go to landfill basically and putting into things like sharing sheds, where people can access that food for free as and when they need it. Fuel security, so looking at renewables and things like that, it's got the climate element, but at the same time it's reducing that fuel poverty within communities. And this is more sort of related to the tool libraries, connecting and equitable. So repair cafes, bike sheds and tool libraries, it's making sure that everyone has access to the same things. So for example, if someone wanted to start cycling to work, that'd be good for the environment, good for them. And we can sort of make sure that there's bike sheds and things like that ready for people to borrow them. And it stops this sort of consumerism of buying lots of things that maybe aren't needed. If you're only going to use drill once a year, then maybe borrow it instead of buying it, that kind of thought process. So yeah, I kind of went through this a little bit at the beginning, but the sort of aims and objectives within communities for us is to raise awareness of the climate change and the actions communities can take to mitigate and adapt to climate change. So it's building that awareness up, that sort of networking element, and partnership working as well. Highlight projects at local level and encourage additional participation. So there's a little sort of event or a little group that's starting up, we can sort of spotlight them through our social media and things like that, and really get them working with bigger groups to push that a little bit. Facilitate coordination and collaboration. So again, just encouraging that working together and providing a voice for local communities. And again, we're wanting to raise awareness of this whole hub network because we're all doing similar things to try and help in communities along with climate change and climate action. So we're all sort of trying to raise awareness of this together. So the support that we can offer, Sustainable Spaces I touched on before, that is a programme that we've developed that helps community owned or community run spaces become more sustainable. So maybe if you are thinking about setting up a tool library, that would be a really good thing to sort of think about the space that you'll be using, how the actual space can be a little bit more environmentally friendly. We can help you access funding as well for renewables and anything like insulation, anything to make the space a little bit more environmentally friendly. Networking, so we've got our monthly member networking, which is online, so anyone's able to come to that. We've got our online skill shares that we do, so that's bringing groups together to share what they're doing and share experiences and knowledge as well, and our in-person or regional networking. So each of our development officers in their area will do an in-person sort of quarterly networking event where we get everyone together and have a little chat. And obviously this little bit at the bottom, we can sort of support with most things. If we don't know how to do it, we'll know someone who does, and we can put you in touch with them. So local place plans, reviewing funding bids, signposting to various groups, and helping develop projects and deliver them as well. So really we can, if we can't help, we'll know someone who can, or we'll have spoken to someone who's done it before. Funding. So this is a little bit about the funding that we've got available. So we've got £500 for climate action projects. If you're setting up a new project or want to develop yours further, it's on a monthly rolling basis, and it is just £500 for that sort of startup seed funding costs. Our funding finder goes out monthly to our members, and this month's got over £2 million worth of funding available on it, from various different groups and organisations and things like that. And then the last one we've got here, which maybe isn't super relevant for tool libraries, but it's our food hygiene heroes. And it's your level 2 training for staff and volunteers if you're handling food and things like that to make sure it's being done safely. It's all fully funded. It's just a certificate that we can give out once you've done the training. So yeah, if you are in Highlands, Orkney and Shetland area, obviously we'd be really, really keen to see you sign up as a member. It's a really good thing. It just lets you just be part of this bigger network where there is just so much support and so much help out there, and it does help you get into these sort of funding things. And it just gives, the more members we've got, the more voice we've got when it comes back to policy making as well. So it's a really good thing. If you are out with our area, it'd be a really good idea to get in contact with your local hub, and maybe see what their membership is, how you can sign up, and what support they can offer you. Hopefully it'll be really, really valuable for you. And yeah, I've still got Katie's name on this. I'm Lucy, but similar email, it's lucy@highclimatehub.co.uk. So yeah, that's me. Thank you very much, Jane, for introducing me, and I'll stop sharing.
Thank you. That was really helpful, and thank you. I know it's difficult to stand in at the last minute, so that was great. Well done.
Thank you.
So what I thought is, if we save questions until the very end, and then hopefully we can just have a chat and see what people are wanting to ask about. I will have a look and sort of see if I can find a link as well to give you the list of all of the climate hubs, so you can have a look up and see the one in your local area, if you're not aware of it already. Okay, so now I'm going to pass on to Chris from Edinburgh Tool Library.
Hello, hello.
Hi there.
Yeah, can I reiterate, that was very impressive. Lucy, having done it at the last minute. I've known about this for weeks, and I'm not going to be as slick as you, so apologies, everybody. I've got a sort of a list of points that Jane asked me to kind of cover, but there's a couple of things that I sort of popped up, I think, mainly from Jane's kind of talk, but just a couple of things that I thought might be supplementarily helpful. One thing that was talking about the repairs and things like that, and I think that is definitely something to factor into your thinking from the start. We have just done a bit of a number crunching in terms of number of repairs compared to the number of loans, and so our number of repairs is basically 10% of the loans that we did. So if you can, even if it's just a ballpark figure, you're not, if you're starting out or if you've been going, you can see your trajectory of expansion, roughly how many loans that you're going to do, then, plan and budget for about 10% of those needing fixed in some way. And that was that's taken us 10 years to get to that insight. So hopefully it's more helpful if you start out that way. The other thing was about rates. There's a note on there for about rates. We at one point made the mistake of getting the fear from all the council bills that we got through the door and paid our rates to stop them sending us scary red letters, which we got back, but it took about 6 months to get back several £100s that we'd paid when we were starting out and didn't have several £100s sloshing about. And when I spoke to the council, they were like, "Oh no, you know, like just ignore those letters." So maybe this is not official CCS, and this is my own personal opinion and not that of the organisation. But ignore those letters and don't pay them, because you will not have to pay them if you're planning to be a charity. The other, yeah, sorry, I'm going to go through Jane's sort of point. So she asked me to talk about I guess the startup sort of period with Edinburgh Tool Library. We initially started as a pop-up location from a police box. So we were only using our sort of place of distribution 2-3 hours a week, which is a very helpful model, I would say, if people are thinking about, well, we might have access to, you know, a cupboard in the back of the library or the back of a charity shop, but actually, you know, we want to be somewhere a bit more front and center. So, you know, when you're thinking about spaces to rent or spaces to reach people, it doesn't necessarily have to be that you put all your eggs in one basket in terms of, you know, this is where we're gonna have to keep our tools on the high street, and you know, and so, you know, potentially pay more in rent or pay rent when we could get somewhere that's just a storage facility for free. Just think about it, you know, you're not as you start out, you know, you're not going to have millions of loans, and you don't want to be trying to find volunteers to be open 7 days a week, you know, sort of 8 hours a day. You actually want to try and bottleneck those people. And I would definitely recommend, you know, speaking to your community in terms of what suits them, but I would assume you will probably find a similar kind of thing to us, in that most people are going to be using the tools over the weekend. So we, you know, still now, our volunteers run shifts on a Friday for collection and a Monday for dropping them back. So something along those, you know, doesn't have to be necessarily. And also, if you're starting out and you have, you know, a small number of volunteers and a Friday doesn't work for people, you know, you might have a really nice village pub. Fair enough, do it on a Thursday night. Like, you know, do it to suit those people. But I think that's definitely, and you also get that feeling of community, and you know, other people seeing other people collecting. You know, you get that you know, that kind of buzz around it, rather than necessarily just, you know, you only ever see the person that you're borrowing from, because you know you're open such wide hours that actually doesn't feel like anybody else is doing it. It can be slightly isolating. So I would, you know, bottleneck it as much as you can, and you can always open more hours, or you can say, you know, once we get to a certain number of members, then we're going to open on a, you know, a midweek evening or something like that. So in terms of the items themselves, power tools are very commonly borrowed from us. You will find that your community and your donations will often mirror the demand that you will face for those items. So, you know, there is a logic to it, but the logic does follow through into the sort of reality, is in that, you know, the things that people are more likely to want to borrow are also the things that they're more likely to want to or be able to donate to you. So you will have loads of people wanting to borrow cordless drills. You will also have loads of cordless drills donated. What Jane covered about having a budget for your inventory to start with, the way that we did, we had, our budget was about 40 quid when we started. But what I would recommend is saving a little bit of that budget, doing your sort of donation drive, and then using that budget to fill any gaps that are, you know, particularly obvious. So we didn't get a cordless drill donated when we opened up, but we had some really niche stuff. So the only thing we bought was a very average cordless drill, because it would just be weird if we didn't have one, basically. But then, you know, you will find over time that will sort of follow the pattern of what you're actually lending out to people. There are some items that you will find that break a lot, that there are a lot of demand, or are commonly misused, you know, ending in failure, and that, you know, things like pressure washers and wallpaper steamers. Never say no to either of those, especially if they're work. You know, I would say, you know, as long as they're working, people just boil. You know, there's very little can go wrong with a wallpaper steamer, but when it goes wrong, it's fatal. So, you know, you will need a steady supply of those. You'll also get given a steady supply of those. You know, they're the kind of thing that people will buy, and everybody hates stripping wallpaper, and so they do it once and then they never want to do it again in their lives, so they will gladly give it away, if that means they don't have to change the wallpaper again. Same with pressure washers. They're the sort of thing people buy on a whim, and then they're actually they often do get, because of the pressure, there's issues with valves and things inside. But in terms of volunteer recruitment and training, in terms of starting out, I would try and get a core group of volunteers from the start. The more shoulders you can kind of put it all on, the better. And I think that group can be the ones that are sort of modeling the behavior and the processes and the procedures, and keep working with other people. There's an awful lot of shadowing and kind of that you can write a training manual, but actually a lot of the learning will be done just by doing it, and a lot of it is very logical. There will be a point where if you grow to a certain size, then you might recruit a volunteer coordinator, and maybe that's the point where you, as well as coordinating, you start to try and codify some of the things so that you have like a written manual. So it might be things as simple as, when you start, this is how you open up, this is what the things you should put out for everybody to see, this is where the leaflets are kept, this is what you say if somebody asks about X, Y, or Z. But a lot of it will be, having a core group of people, and you put them in pairs with newer people, and you learn from each other, and you sort of build it from that. Managing health and safety. So yeah, totally, absolutely what Jane was saying. The biggest things about keeping on top of your PAT testing. I also think it's really important to think of your community of members as your sort of best resource in terms of the health and safety of the items. So it's about creating a relationship where they feel comfortable to say, it didn't sound right, that they're not telling you everything's fine because they're worried that you're going to go, right, give me 50 quid for a new drill. So just really, when they, that health and safety job starts when they walk in the door in terms of becoming a member. So you need to get them to understand that as an organization, we're all looking out. You're looking out for us, we're looking out for you, we're all working together. The volunteers are essentially fellow members who just are giving a bit extra time. And so if something, if you start using something, the point is that we will use them until they are unusable anymore. So at some point, somebody will be the person, holding the parcel when the music stops. But at that point, don't use it anymore, bring it back, tell us what the problem is, give us as much detail, and if we can fix it, we'll fix it, and if we can't, we'll give you something else. But we're not going to be chasing. So we want you to be, honest, and again, with the help, the volunteer training, one of the most important things that we do with our volunteers is get them to ask, how did it go? Was everything okay with the equipment? And there are the number of times people will you come back in and you'll say, oh, everything all right? And they're like, fine. And but then if you say, was everything okay with the tools? The second question, they will go, oh, well, yeah, actually, but it started making, and if it's just about returning things, then there will be things that, you won't get that detail, or maybe they think, oh, well, it still worked all right, so it would be fine for somebody else, whereas we know that we've got 5 of those, so actually taking one out of circulation where we fix it is totally okay. It's not a problem for us. So a lot of communication, a lot of being honest with people, and what you don't want is for somebody to get hurt and that to affect the project and the rest of it. But I always use the analogy of like when talking about insurance and all the rest of it, you want to kind of get people to think of themselves as part of your community and your team. And if you're a Hibs fan, sorry, I live around the corner from Easter Road, so I always use Hibs as my if you're a Hibs fan, I feel very sorry for you this season. But apart from that, if you're a season ticket holder at Hibs and you tripped over something that shouldn't be there in the corridor, if you feel like you're part of that community, you're maybe just going to grumble about it and you know, you're not going to take them to court. If you were a Secret Hearts fan at the Hibs, you would probably try and rinse them and get as much money out of them as possible. So, you know, you're trying to build that sort of feeling of like, I'm part of this, and you know, something that works against the collective works against me as well. So, you know, yeah, that's the sort of relationship you're trying to build from the outset. We talked about raising awareness, or asked about sort of raising awareness. I think, you know, that social media is great, and it's a, you know, oh no, social media is terrible and probably the source of most aggro in the world, and I hate it, but I don't need to do it anymore. So, but it is very useful in this context. So do use that, and particularly in your communities, you know, you will have an inkling about how people get to know about things. So it might be on Facebook, it might be in a Facebook group, it might be, you know, God forbid, Twitter. But that, if that's the way that people find out about things, then use it. But I also think it's really important, particularly for those people that might be harder to reach. You know, there are a certain demographic, there are certain generations that use social media. You will only, you know, if you use only those channels to get to people, they are the people that will be part of it. So I think there's always space for, you know, events, pop-up kind of, you know, benches. Get, you know, you have a really interesting stall if you go to an exhibit. You know, you have things for people to handle. You could give them, you know, we've done surveys where we, instead of, you know, just ticking a box or whatever, we've had a bit of wood and you've got to screw something into it, you know, ask them a stupid question, and it's just to get them to pick up a drill and use a drill and get them, you know, actively doing something that will stick with people. Be in the places where people are going to be, go to those events. You know, I think that's really important. And I think one thing, you know, sort of tied to volunteers as well, is thinking about who needs and who wants your service. So who are you trying to reach? Because, you know, they should be your volunteers. That community, that demographic that you're trying to serve, if it's a specific demographic, or if it's everybody, then everybody should be represented in your staff team and your volunteers. And so if you know, again, if you only use one mode of social media to reach people, you will get the demographic that uses that kind of thing. So you need to kind of try and spread it out. But you also need to reach out to those groups, you know, so other charities that partner with particular groups, and you know, the people that you don't see, you know, as you get up and running, the people you don't see coming to use your service, where are they? Why aren't they using that service? Maybe it's maybe there's a reason, and that's fine, but understand that, you know. So I think that's a really important thing to you know, to sort of emphasize. And then yeah, I was asked to talk a little bit about our outreach and our workshops that we run. I think I was really interested with Lucy's slide with the sort of 4 elements about mental health and food security and fuel security, and then the sort of tool library connected and equitable sort of level. And I think the great thing about tool libraries, but any sharing library as well, is that you will be of use to people across the board there. You know, so we've done, you know, most of our outreach work is working with people, you know, with mental health struggles or various disadvantages, or people who are excluded from society for one reason or another. You know, food security, we do a lot of work with community gardens. We do a lot of, you know, there's a lot of gardening tools and benefits there. And you know, fuel security, we have a group who are going around draft proofing homes for people in fuel poverty, that there's a referral path through there. And then obviously, you know, tool libraries and equity, and you know, that's kind of as Lucy said, very much kind of where our sort of main level is. But what you are providing, you know, I think it's really important to think both individually of the tools as use to your community, but equally the organization as a tool itself. So if you can get other partners, other community groups, and other individuals kind of thinking of like, this is a, you know, what exists in the tool library is at my disposal to, you know, to take steps to improve my community, or do things that I couldn't do before, or provide things that you know, or support groups that are underserved, then you know, that's another way, because you really want people to kind of take it where they want it. You don't want to be necessarily this is what it's going to be, and you can come if you want. It could be anything, and it could be that you start off as a tool library with we're quite interested in offering a more diverse sort of list of items that engage people that don't engage with tools. It's a very Western culture, European culture, like DIY culture is very Western and European. But if we've got people from all over the world, then we need to change our inventory and serve them as well. And so we might need to change what we serve. Otherwise, we do see, and we will continue to see the same faces as we do so far. So that's just something to consider. Outreach groups, we work essentially, we look at the stereotype of who is in a workshop, i.e. me, and we say, right, well, all the other groups that aren't represented here, they're the ones we want to encourage and support and train, who have been underserved by training and access and education to get to the point of being confident and using the tools. The majority, we have it's like 51% female membership. We have 20% of our members are identified as having a disability. We're overrepresented in all of the sort of protected characteristics, and a lot of that is through partnership work and looking at who's not at the table. And obviously, to a point, you're working with small groups. It's not that those groups themselves are the people that are populating those statistics. They are contributing to them, but it's working with those people and those people becoming advocates in their communities. And then, the people that haven't been to the workshops or the outreach class are then engaging with our organization. So we do between 4 weeks and 12-week programs in our workshop. And we usually would typically have 6 people in at a time. So 6 people for 12 weeks. That's not a huge. We've got 2,500 members now. That's not a huge proportion in terms of shifting demographics. But they talk to their friends. They talk to the charity and the partners that are there. They advertise it. They talk about it, and we get known in those circles, and we get people coming in who haven't been along to the outreach, but know that we're open and friendly and a safe space for them. So that's transformed our membership to be more inclusive. And there are loads of health and safety aspects to running a workshop. The space is very much appreciated and needed, but I would also say that comes at it costs money. We have grant income, which mostly serves our outreach programs. But the members also access the space, and realistically, we're wanting to move towards a model where we would ask for a contribution every time they use that. It would be a flexible contribution depending on their sort of financial status, but blades need to be replaced, sanding belts, all the rest of it. There's costs, there's power, there's electricity, there's access to the space. And I think the way that we are coming to think of that in terms of how we communicate that with members is that if members want to use the space, then if they're not costing the charity, then it's much easier for us to make sure that there is a space available for them to access. So they're not competing with an outreach group for that space. That the outreach group will be grant funded, so there will be the costs will be covered by that. So what we're trying to sort of move towards, probably in the spring, when we're going to shift our workshop setup around, is sort of getting people to understand, look, this comes, every session we run costs some money. If you contribute to this and it's not costing the charity, then we can make sure that there'll always be something for our members to access, because there are some jobs that are just a lot easier in a workshop, or a lot less messy, or a lot better if somebody else has to clean it up than you do. Which tends to be the case. But I think that's everything covered that Jane asked me for. I feel like I've been talking for too long, so maybe I'll shut up. But
no, that's brilliant. We're in good time, so we've got half an hour left for questions. So if you either want to put your hand up or put a question in the chat, if anybody has anything that they want to cover that hasn't been covered already. I'll have a look through and see if I can see anything. Yeah, I mean, one thing, just really quickly say, one things that I haven't covered in my presentation, I didn't ask Chris to do, but he sort of touched on, is the wider benefits of sharing libraries. So, but there's a huge amount of evidence. We've done research on it, just about the positive impacts. And if if you're looking for funding, we've got a huge amount of evidence to say why these are fantastic projects. So there's that one. Have we got anything there? Yeah, no, go on.
I was also just going to say, and I know one or two of you may have already done this, but the Community Learning Exchange, which Circular Community Scotland, I think are still you can tick the box to say that you're legit. They will fund visits, so if people want to come and visit ETL, there's just it's a very quick turnaround, very easy form to fill in, but they will pay for your travel, and they will pay us to take the time to sort of sit with you and answer your questions. Unfortunately, we have tried to do it the other way around, where we've come to visit, but that's not allowed apparently. So you'd have to come here.
Yeah, no, we did try and investigate that, but it didn't happen. One thing to add that I hadn't put into my presentation is obviously Chris is now working on a huge level, which is fantastic. I think 2,500 members. Just to sort of share experience of some of the smaller projects in small communities, rural communities. Had a conversation with somebody recently, because I think some of you coming from areas in the Highlands and Islands, maybe smaller communities. Anyway, had a conversation with somebody recently. She's saying one of the things to consider is that because she knows everybody in her community, what tends to happen is she's walking down the road and somebody will say, oh, I didn't get around to using that drill last weekend, but I'm going to do it like in 2 weeks' time. Is that all right? And I think because of the scale and because of the nature of the community, she can work on that level of flexibility. But obviously that definitely doesn't work if you're in a bigger organization. But it's just something to be prepared for if you are in a really small, if you're in a small village, that is probably going to be something that you need to be prepared for. And you need to decide how strictly you're going to stick with your rules and how much you're going to let it be a little bit more freewheeling. Anyway, let's have a look at some of these questions. All right, Trish, did you have a question? Do you want to just say that out loud?
Yeah. We've got limited opening hours, 2 half days a week. And one of the things we've been thinking about is whether to use lockers. So, for example, outside Tesco's, there's a whole bank of in-post lockers where people come and collect their parcels and return their parcels and things. And I was just wondering if anybody's tried that in any of their communities and if there's any scope for that kind of thing, because we just felt that might improve access.
There's a project down in England that has done that. I can't remember off the top of my head who that is. I will have to look that up and get back to you. And that is very much sort of like in the Amazon locker thing in a shopping centre. Chris, is it something you've ever considered?
Yeah, it was actually. Sorry, I think my connection, at least when I was doing my presentation, was okay, but it's saying it's unstable. So apologies if I cut out. So there are a couple of things. Reykjavik Tool Library, Iceland. You cannot volunteer in Iceland. It's illegal. So basically means you cannot run a tool library because you have to pay everybody. We have 85 volunteers. So that wouldn't work for us. But because of that, they have developed a system which I think works with My Turn. You would have to pay for it. It's not cheap. We have balked at that amount of money, and so we've got a workaround, which we're piloting at the moment, which is basically just boxes that are built with combination locks on them, but the box itself is listed as a tool. So you would book your tool and the box, and then you would get an email to say that your tools have arrived. And then once they're checked out, we know that the box is empty. We can, and you, obviously that works for returns or, sort of putting them out. I would suggest if you're looking at out of hours, you might want to start with returns, just so that people don't know whether there's anything in there, just in terms of security, if it was going to be accessible. But what we're looking to do is do it in community centres that have, a level of supervision. So, they're open to the public, but they will be closed at night, for instance, and they're not bolted to the side of a supermarket, like you're saying. But it would be, somewhere with a reception, sits in the corner. It's open 9 till 5 every day of the week and over the weekends, and and we just need to get them there and back. And we're doing that with cargo bikes. So there are obviously limits with size of item and things like that, and the number of them. But it's also, we're looking at it as a sort of the thin end of the wedge in terms of getting into new communities. So when you're starting out, there's not going to be loads of people in that community that are members. So and once it gets to the point where it's really hard to return your tool or pick a tool up because it's so busy, then we can say, well, hey, everybody who's using this location, what about we do a pop-up session for 3 or 4 hours, and then everybody can get their tools, and there's the demand, and you're clearly interested in using tools, so maybe you could be our volunteer. And that's kind of how we're sort of looking to expand the interest in different communities. But like I say, we literally installed it in October, so I don't even know if it's been used yet. But it is a pilot. It is part of our model for expansion in the next 5 years. So I really hope it works, because we're very much invested in it working.
Oh, excellent. There's a written question from Alex Effinger. So Chris, are you able to look at that? I don't know if everyone else can see that. So it's about insurance. So Chris, Alex says, our insurance brokers are very cautious about the whole thing, and so far it does not look like we will go ahead, as we cannot guarantee that people will use tools correctly. So are there any good arguments for us to bring forward to the next discussion with them? Yeah, Chris or anyone else from an existing tool library who has insurance, have you got anything to add to that?
I would just say go with a different insurer.
Yeah.
That people, insurance, and you can do anything, no matter how ridiculous, or you could open a chainsaw juggling library and your insurance premium would be very expensive, but it's if you're willing to pay enough, somebody will insure it. So it's not that you can't get insurance. What it is that company doesn't have a policy that that doesn't cover the risk that they perceive, but other people will. If you go elsewhere, Keegan and Pennykid are the brokers that we use, and I think the insurer is Royal Sun Alliance. They know exactly what we do. We've been insuring with them for 10 years.
Yeah. Okay, so Alex is saying that yeah. So Alex, are you able to come off mute? So you're part of a bigger organization, and so the existing insurance, you've got to stick with them. Is that the situation?
Yeah. Hi.
Yeah.
I don't know if you can hear me properly.
Yeah. Yeah.
My internet is not very good, which is why I typed stuff in the chat.
That's good.
So we're a public library service, and our insurance broker is for the whole of the culture Perth and Kinross. So there's no chance of changing the insurance broker just because of one project like this. And they are not happy with the waiver agreement. They're not happy with risk assessments. They're not happy with all the paperwork that we say, because they simply say that it's not enough. And if somebody uses the tool incorrectly, even though we've inducted them and even though we gave them a training in how to use the tool correctly, they will still sue us. So local authority insurers are a nightmare. I totally agree, but unfortunately that's the situation we're in. So I just need some really good arguments here. I need some really, really good arguments for saying look, this is enough, basically, or we can do this X, Y, Z to ensure that people will use the things correctly. But even a waiver agreement is just, it's not enough. At least that's what they say.
Yeah, I mean, I mean, a waiver agreement is worth absolutely nothing legally. It's you know, it's not so we always use the way we explained the waiver agreement was always in that kind of thing I was saying about making people not think about, you know, they're part of your team, they've got a vested interest, and it's more about the psychology of like being part of your team from the start. I mean, yeah, I think are you part of the Scottish Library Information Council thing with John Lewis funding, was it? Or is it different?
So we got the funding for the Lend and Mend library. Yeah.
I mean, I would, my gut feeling would be that it would be a service that could be run within the library potentially by a different organization. If you're hamstrung by,
that's not happening.
Yeah, I mean, it might be that you can't do it. It might be that, you know, might have to find someone that can be in a separate organization that can use those tools. I mean, there are people who will insure it, but like you say, if you can't move insurers, you know, the point about, you know, somebody might sue us. Well, yeah, that's true, absolutely. That's why we have insurance. That's why your insurer exists, you know. But the problem is that they have off the shelf you know, policies that, you know, it will cover this amount for this thing, and what will be happening is that they don't have a policy that fits the profile of risk that what you're doing. So essentially, it's not that they couldn't do it. The problem is that they're not seeing that there's no money in it for them, in terms of they'd have to pay somebody to go away, calculate this new policy that would essentially be for one customer. That's the tricky part of it, and that's why, you know, when you use a broker, so we use Keegan and Pennyquid, we tell them what we're doing, and they find a policy that suits them, and it could be with any, you know, they'll have 40 or 50 insurers on there, but obviously with your larger organization being tied in there, you know, that's your two options are to you know, for the organization to change that, which I understand is probably not or for the insurer to you know, to sort of change their policy, or find a, you know, create another policy.
I mean, I know that with that when we obviously you said that you've watched that session, but with the Repair Cafe issue, the guy who came from the insurance company then said that they can do Repair Cafe insurance on top of an existing policy. So I don't know if that's something that whether they would consider, yes, you've already got insurance, but there will be, rather than getting them to change their insurance policy for the whole council, whether you could have a separate insurance policy specifically for that activity. That might be one way of doing it, because, you know, if they're not prepared to accept the evidence that there are people out there insuring existing tool libraries, you know, there are lots of tool libraries out there doing this already. You know, if that's not a big enough argument for them, it's really, I mean, maybe it's worth trying to go independently to one of the brokers that we have on our site, trying to get them to price it up. But also, if you could get from them like how many claims they have, you know, it might be ridiculously low. I mean, I know with the Repair Cafe one, I remember him saying that there's never been a claim against a Repair Cafe. I imagine it's probably similar with tool libraries. You know, if you could present the evidence of the number of claims, that, you know, that's something that might speak their language. Yeah, don't know. Okay, so are there any more questions? Is there anything that we haven't covered? Okay, great. So I hope that's been a helpful session. You know, thank you very much to our two guest speakers. It's always great to have other people contributing. So just to say two more events that we've got coming up. This is the last event for the Share and Repair that we've got this year. In January, Chris is coming back again. So on the 30th of January, we've got another online event, which is called Growth Through Community Partnerships. and that's Chris. And also we've got a speaker from Cambridge Carbon Footprint, who run a network of repair cafes in Cambridgeshire, and it's looking at the hub and spokes model for growth, which should be a really interesting event, like looking how you can work with other local organisations to expand the reach of what you do. And then, so that's on the 30th of January online, and then there is the gathering, which is on the 27th of February. That's an actual full day in person for everyone in the share and repair community in Scotland. So full details about both those events will be coming up soon with booking links and things. That will be in newsletters. Yes, so I think I'm going to stop recording now. So Izzy, if you could just stop the recording.